Welcome to the 13th episode of DJ's Take. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for listening. Yesterday, someone very close to me was doing an imitation of me doing the podcast, doing the intro. It was the funniest thing. I sound like an idiot. She was like, "Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for listening. This is DJ's Take." I was like, I don't even sound like that, but low-key I do. So I'm changing the intro soon. But yeah, if it's the very first time that you've listened to this podcast, what are we doing here? So this podcast is dedicated to exciting you, educating you, and entertaining you all at the same time. So what that means is I want you to leave with something every single time that you listen to this podcast. So of course I want you to have a good time, and of course I want you to be entertained, but I also want you to be able to take something from maybe a lesson, maybe a piece of advice, I don't know, something. I want you to leave with something. So with that being said, I don't know a lot about a lot, so I'm going to be bringing on people that I know that will know their stuff in their given field. So sometimes I want to bring on a scientist, or maybe a vegan, or maybe a psychologist. Whatever that person knows about a given topic, I want them to come on and then just spew their knowledge, and we can just absorb it, you and I as the audience. So yeah, that's the game plan of this podcast. Now, for today's episode, as I'm sure some of you know, I love books that improve my mental, or I'm learning something about myself, or learning to be more confident, or to talk to people better. Anything along the lines of that, I am going to love. So I was looking up another book that I could sink my teeth into and then break down on this podcast. And I just simply typed in best books on mindset, like mindset books, because you know, those are the books I love. And the book that caught my eye was a book by Mark Manson. Now, this is actually the title of the book. The book is called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a F. Now, if I actually say the F word every single time he says it, this will turn from being a podcast to Eminem's new rap album. Like, I literally cannot say the F word every single time he says it. So I'm going to just say F, because he literally drops the F bomb, I think, about 50 times in one chapter. He calms down towards the end of the book, but he says it like 100 times. So it's the subtle art of not giving a bleep. But what the book is really about, it's mastering the art of being a better person. And it's called the subtle art of not giving an F, a counterintuitive approach to living a good life. And I read the book. It's only 144 pages, and I don't actually know anything about Mark Manson, but it's a pretty awesome book, and there's some great lessons, and there's some great stories that he had in the book. So I don't know anything about Mark Manson. I don't know who he is. I don't know anything about his backstory apart from this book. So I just picked up the book, read it, and we're going to break it down, and there's some cool stories in the book, and we're going to hopefully pick up something, because that's the whole object of this book. So, yeah, let's just dive straight into it. The last thing, what I sometimes do is, when I do these book breakdowns, I'll send it to the author and be like, "Hey, I really like your work. I did this analysis of this book, and I think it was the 12th episode. The 12th episode is called "What Does Oprah, Barack Obama, and Bill Gates All Have in Common?" And that is a breakdown of one of my favorite books called Relentless by Tim Grover. Now, I sent that to Tim Grover on Instagram. I was like, "Bro, I'm a huge fan. I love your work, blah, blah, blah." I just fanboyed out. And then about 2 days later, he messaged me back like, "Hey, yeah, I'm going to listen. Really appreciate it. I looked at my analytics, and he's from Boston, and Boston's in Massachusetts. And I saw it was like a listener in Massachusetts an hour later. So shout out to Tim Grover for listening. I really, really appreciate that. That's someone that I just love and idolize. So yeah, that was awesome to see. So let's jump into The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Bleep by Mark Manson. So I'm going to share one of the funniest stories I think I've ever heard. And I was speaking to my parents about it, and they remember this story actually happening, and it's so nuts. I couldn't actually believe that this story was real. But let's just dive straight into it. So in my notes, it says the best story of all time, 29 years and no surrender. Okay, so just sit back, relax, and enjoy the podcast and enjoy this story. So on December 26th, 1944, Second Lieutenant Hiro Onoda, of Japan, of the Japanese Imperial Army, was deployed to the small island of Lubang in the Philippines. His orders were to slow the United States' progress as much as possible, to stand and fight at all costs, and to never surrender. So we're talking Second World War, baby. Both he and his commander knew it was essentially a suicide mission, but they're Japanese. They got heart. They don't care. Onoda and his men set up a guerrilla warfare campaign against the USA. Half a year later, in August, the US, Japan, I've got a little something for you, and they dropped atomic bombs on the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Now, naturally, the Japanese surrendered because the Japanese were like, okay, well, this is going a bit too far. You just dropped atom bombs on us. We'll surrender. But thousands of Japanese soldiers were still scattered among the Pacific Isles, and most, like Onoda, were hiding in the jungle, unaware that the war was over. So let's put this into perspective. You've got a crazy Japanese man who has been told to never surrender, cares nothing, only cares about his country, and does not know that the war is over. This is going to make for a good story. So the US military, in conjunction with the Japanese government, dropped thousands of leaflets throughout the Pacific region announcing that the war was over and it was time for everyone to go home. But Onoda was not having it. Onoda and his men, like many others, found and read these leaflets, but unlike most of the others, Onoda decided that they were fake, a trap set by the American forces to get the guerrilla fighters to show themselves. Onoda burned the leaflets, and he and his men stayed hidden and continued to fight. So the war is over. The war is over. The war is done. Hitler's done. Japan have surrendered. USA have chilled. Everybody's chilled. Everything is done. But these Japanese guys don't know that the war is done. So they're still in the Philippines kicking. So 5 years go by, the leaflets had stopped, yet there was Hiro Onoda and his merry men still shooting at farmers, burning crops, stealing their livestock, and murdering locals who wandered too far into the jungle. The Philippine government then took to drawing up new flies and spreading them out across the jungle. So, okay, please put this into perspective. So, I live in the country. So imagine the war. The war was the Second World War was going on. Third World War was going on. Third World War was ended. Even though if it ever happened, we'd all be dead. But 3 years it's ended. And I live in the country and I'm taking my dog for a walk. And there's this old French geezer who still thinks the war in France is going on. He shoots at me and my dogs. That's literally what is happening. The war had been over for 5 flipping years and this guy was still shooting and killing civilians. Still killing innocent civilians who came too far into the jungle. What a nut. So, come out, they said. The war is over. You lost. The Japanese government gave one last-ditch effort. They sent photos of their families. Photos of their families. So imagine, you are still fighting. The war has been going, the war ended 7 years ago. People send photos of your families, but you are so stuck on your cause. You're so stuck on fighting for the Japanese army that even when people send photos of your flipping family, you go, no, this is a trick. So again, he thought it was a trick from the USA. By the 1960s, Onoda was the only man left in his crew. So, again, the war was over. The war was done. Everything had finished. The war was over like 15 years ago. But again, Onoda didn't care. So the last death of Onoda's right-hand man stirred controversy in Japan. And people started to wonder if Onoda was still alive and kicking. Oh, he was. So the Japanese and Philippine government sent search parties to find Onoda. No luck. It wasn't until a young traveller called Inoria Suzuki, and no, that is not the Suzuki, the car makes Suzuki, it's some random Japanese geezer, found him. Suzuki found him in 4 days in the Lubang jungle. I mean, questions, how did Suzuki not get shot or killed by an army-trained nutter, but whatever. So Suzuki ended up finding Hiro Onoda, and they actually became boys. So Suzuki asked Onoda why he'd stayed and continued to fight. Onoda said it was simple. He had been given the order to never surrender, so he stayed. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't know one person on this earth that would stay and fight because superior command said so. So for nearly 30 years, so 30 years have gone by, simply been following an order. It wasn't until his commanding officer, Taniguchi, so you know the man who said to him, look, you never surrender, you never give up, these Americans are never going to take over Japan. That one guy, Taniguchi, said to him, never surrender. It wasn't until Taniguchi officially flew to the Philippines and said to him, bro, the war is over. It was literally 3 decades ago. So imagine this. Taniguchi flew to the Philippines in 1974. That's 29 years after the war. 29 years after he had been told, never surrender. Now, the author Mark Manson says this: humans often choose to dedicate large portions of their life to seemingly useless or destructive causes. On the surface, these causes make no sense. It's hard to imagine how Onoda could have been happy on that island for those 30 years, living off insects and rodents, sleeping in the dirt, murdering civilians decade after decade. What a nut. However, yet later in his life, when he came back to Japan, Onoda said he regretted nothing. He claimed that he was proud of his choices and his time on Lubang. So this dude was happy murdering civilians, eating insects, and sleeping on rocks. Different breed. He said that it had been an honor to devote a sizable portion of his life in the service of a non-existent empire. Oh my god, I actually can't get over this story. When I found out about it yesterday, I was dying. Hiro Onoda returned to Japan in 1974 and became a kind of celebrity in his home country. He was shuttled around from talk show to radio station. Politicians clamored to shake his hand. So basically, he came back and he was a hero. Everybody was like, oh, you're the man, you're the man. So yeah, naturally he was a hero. What makes it even funnier is that the Japanese government offered him a seriously large sum of money and he rejected it and he gave it to charity. So even though he was killing civilians, the guy clearly had morals. Kind of. We'll get to that. God damn, I love doing this podcast. Okay, so, but what he found when he returned to Japan horrified him. So this is the irony. A consumerist, capitalist, superficial culture that had lost all of the traditions of honor and sacrifice upon which his generation had been raised. So basically, ironically, he became more annoyed than ever at what Japan had become. So no more samurai, no more sake, no more traditional Japanese wear. It was basically just... It was becoming more and more like the West. So I think he became really pissed off because he was like, I just spent 30 years of my life, dedicating my life to eating insects. And whilst I was doing this, Japan was becoming like the enemy. So Japan slowly became more and more like the West. So he's probably thinking, so I spent 30 years in the jungle. The USA dropped 2 atom bombs, hydrogen bombs, I don't know, 2 super explosive bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And not only did they do that, but then after they dropped bombs on us, we became more like them. What? So he got pissed and he eventually moved to Brazil. He came back actually when there was some issue in Japan with some kid trying to kill his parents and he wanted to talk to the child. But he ended up living out his life in Brazil. And I was talking to my mum and dad about this yesterday. And my dad said he remembered when Onoda came back to Japan. And apparently he came back with his head held high, saluting to all the Japanese people. Apparently he came back like a hero. So yeah, that's hilarious. My dad actually remembers him coming back in 1974. So my dad would have been like 15 or some shit. So yeah. So this is the main point that I want to bring up of Onoda's story. So whether you find Onoda's story admirable or ludicrous, probably both, there are 2 lessons in this nutty story. Firstly, this guy is a samurai. This guy is the last samurai. Forget Tom Cruise. This guy is the last samurai. Talk about a good soldier. This guy spent 29 years of a commander going, do not surrender. This guy would have done kamikaze, crazy stuff. He would have done anything for superior command. So in some way, I kind of salute how dedicated he was to his cause, because the fact that he was trained to never surrender, and after 29 years, he he had his blinkers on. So it kind of reminds me of someone that's so dedicated to their goals. But the second point that I want to bring up is that this guy is also crazy. He's also loopy. So 29 years on the word of superior command is also crazy. So this alludes to something that is, it's good to sometimes let go of your goals and attack something else. So you're allowed to quit. So I mean, this guy is nuts. So it reminds me of someone that has a goal and chases that goal at any end. So that end might be sacrificing their integrity, sacrificing their dignity, sacrificing others' dignity, doing whatever they need to do to make their goal happen. So they might start to do unspeakable things. They might start to harm other people, but because it's their goal, they just hold on to it. Now that's not a good look, you know. The second that you start to chase your goal at the expense of others, i.e. killing people, you should probably let go of your goal. You should probably take a look in the mirror. So I think that it's a lesson in, like, are your goals the right goals? Are your goals the type of goals that are going to have you being a crazy person, and you're going to look at yourself in the mirror and be like, who have I become? You know, what am I? You know, do you really want to be rich? Do you want to be rich at the expense of screwing over other people, or do you want to do it in an honest manner? You know, that's a question you've got to ask yourself. And I think that's kind of the message in this hero, another story. So yeah, shout out to the Japanese. If you know me personally, you know I love Japanese culture. You know I love Japanese people. So I love this story. And that's why I put it first, because I wanted to talk about it so much. So yeah, that's why I love doing this podcast. So yeah, that's the lesson of I know this story. So we move on. So we're talking about high self-esteemism, which is something that I dislike. Something that I think is stupid. So, sometime in the 1960s, developing high self-esteem, having positive thoughts and feelings about oneself became all the rage in psychology. That's you, Azra, psychology. Research found that people who thought highly about themselves generally performed better and caused fewer problems. Many researchers and policymakers at the time came to believe that raising a population's self-esteem could lead to some tangible social benefits. So these tangible social benefits could be something like lower crime, better academic records, greater employment, lower budget deficits. So they thought, because people feel good about themselves, good shit will happen in the economy, good shit will happen in day-to-day life. But yeah. So participation awards and bogus trophies were invented for any number of mundane and expected activities. Okay, I've got to hit on this point. Participation awards are not smart. They are stupid. If the person who has worked their butt off gets a trophy, and so does the person who just took part, there's something wrong with that. Simply because that's not how jobs work. That's not how applications work. That's not how anything works in life. So why we're now pandering to everybody getting a trophy is beyond me. So for example, I've spoken about this. I love martial arts, you know, and I've grappled in some tournaments. Now, in the very first grappling tournament I ever did, I actually lost. I was doing pretty well, but then I got caught in a triangle. Now, if you don't do martial arts, a triangle is basically, it's a choke where if you don't tap, you get put to sleep. And I got put in a really deep triangle, and I ended up tapping. Now, I won my next 2 matches, but what ends up happening is that because I lost my first match, I'm in a bracket where I can't win the gold. Rightly so. And I lost again. I lost 2 matches that day, and I won 5. If I lose 2 matches, I don't deserve to get any trophy. And I lost. And the guy who smashed me twice, the same guy, he won a trophy. So good for him, because he trained harder and he beat me. So I understand why I'm getting a trophy. So this whole everybody gets trophy stuff is beyond me. But anyways, kids were given inane homework assignments like writing down all the reasons why they thought they were special, or the 5 things they liked about themselves, which I kind of agree with to an extent. So yeah, but a generation later, the data is in. We are not all exceptional. It turns out that merely feeling good about yourself doesn't really mean anything unless you have a good reason to feel good about yourself. So it turns out that adversity and failure are actually useful and even necessary for developing strong-minded and successful adults. I think that's brilliant, because you cannot do anything substantial without blooding your nose. If you look at any person that's done anything incredible, and if you ever want to be incredible, it looks like you've really got to go through the fire. You need to have baptism through fire. And to think that we can just feel good about ourselves and we're gonna get there is beyond me. So he reads, it turns out that teaching people to believe they're exceptional and feel good about themselves, no matter what, doesn't lead to a population full of Bill Gateses and Martin Luther Kings. Boy, if feeling good just led to Martin Luther Kings, I mean, we would all feel good. The author says it leads to a population full of Jimmies. I am dead. A population full of Jimmies. I don't even know what that means. I think it means like a regular person. But that is just so funny. This author, Mark Manson's actually hilarious. His writing style is so funny. But aside from dropping an F-bomb every 15 sentences, the way he writes is so funny. So he says, the problem with entitlement is that it makes people need to feel good about themselves all the time, even at the expense of those around them. So that's kind of alluding to what I was talking about with Hiro and Oda. And because entitled people always need to feel good about themselves, they end up spending most of their time thinking about themselves. So again, I haven't wrote it in my notes, I don't know why, but he talks about a story of this random guy called Jimmy. Oh yeah, that's what he's talking about. So a Jimmy is someone who has really high self-esteem, which is great, but it's at the expense of others. So it's someone that's basically a bullshit artist. So they'll always come up with a new business adventure or a new idea, and they can't hold a job down because of their high self-esteem, and anyone that calls them on their BS is a hater. So what Mark Manson's alluding to is that having high self-esteem is definitely good, but when it's at the expense of others, and when it's at the expense of blindly thinking that you're that guy, it makes no sense. You need a reason to have really high. Of course, you need to be confident. Of course, you need to believe in yourself. But doing that at the expense of just being full of crap is not a good look. So that's what he's trying to push. And I think that's, again, something that young people need, because we're trying to find our feet and we're told to fake it till you make it. We're told, no, you need to earn no confidence. And there's all these different balancing acts that we need to figure out. So again, I think it's a powerful message that we need to look at, that we need to look into, because, you could easily become someone that's full of crap from believing in yourself. So again, you need to balance being full of crap and believing in yourself. And don't be like Hiro and Oda. Don't just chase a goal because you think, yeah, this is my destiny. Don't do that. Don't be that dude. So again, another cool story for you. I love these stories. I always put the awesome stories in the podcast for you guys. I love reading them, as I'm sure you can tell. So it's 1983, and a talented young guitarist was kicked out of his band in the worst possible way. The band had just been signed to a record deal. So imagine this, you and your boys, you're like, yo, we're going to get the record deal. We finally made it. We've made it. We're going to get all the girls. We're going to get the record label. We're going to get the $1 million albums. But they were ready to record their first album, but a couple of days before the recording began, the band showed the guitarist the door. No warning, no discussion, no dramatic blowout. They literally woke him up one day by handing him a bus ticket home. That is a liberty. That is a liberty. That is rude. How can your band teammates do that? Band teammates. How can the band members do that to you? That's a par. So we sat on the back of the bus to Los Angeles from New York. That is a long drive. That's long. That's coast to coast. The guitarist kept asking himself, how did this happen? Why did this happen? But by the time the bus hit LA, the guitarist had gotten over his self-pity and had vowed to start a new band. So he was like, okay, you could do this to me. Have you seen that? Have you seen that movie with Denzel Washington called Training Day? Go on the internet and type in, like, you go do this to me. He's like, oh, okay. It's so funny. So that's basically what he went through. He decided that this new band would be so successful that his old band would forever regret their decision. He would become so famous that they would be subjected to decades of seeing him on TV, hearing him on the radio, seeing posters of him in the streets and pictures of him in the magazine. So he wanted revenge. And so the guitar worked as if he was was possessed by a musical demon. He wrote dozens of songs and practiced religiously, seething with anger, and just wanted revenge. So he basically created a new band with new awesome members and worked his butt off and actually became really, really successful. So, reveal, this guitarist's name was Dave Mustaine. Now, again, I'm not super into metal, so I don't know who Dave Mustaine is. My boy Chris Markham does. Shout out to Chris Markham, my guy. He knows a lot about metal, so hopefully he knows him. And if you know a lot about metal, you know about Dave Mustaine. But basically, the new band he formed was a legendary heavy metal band, Megadeth. Now, Megadeth would go on to sell over 25 million albums, and the tour would tour the world many times over. So basically, my guy Dave Mustaine did it. He did it. He got revenge. It was considered to be one of the most brilliant and influential musicians in the history of heavy metal music. But there's a catch. Unfortunately, the band he was kicked out of was Metallica, which has sold over 180 million albums worldwide. Metallica is considered by many to be one of the greatest rock bands of all time. Oh my God. When I was reading this, I couldn't believe it. So, if you listen to I think it was episode 10, you remember from my old podcast I told a story from a brilliant rock band. Now, I told you about the story of Kirk Hammett, who wanted to improve his guitar skills. Now, Kirk Hammett was brought into this band after someone had been kicked out. That someone was Dave Mustaine. So these two stories link. How crazy is this? I mean, this just shows the universe works in a peculiar way. But the story I told on episode 10 of someone getting kicked out of a rock band is links to this story. So this is the story of the guy who got kicked out. How crazy is that? So Dave Mustaine, whether he realized it or not, chose to measure himself by whether he was more successful and popular than Metallica. The experience of getting thrown out of his former band was so painful for him that he adopted success relative to Metallica. And Lord knows he failed in success relative to Metallica, because even though Megadeth, I have heard of Megadeth because of my crazy rocker friends, but Metallica sold 180 million albums worldwide at the time of this book. So they probably hit 210, 220 now. So they're one of the greatest rock bands of all time. So obviously you're going to not be successful in relation to them. So his metric was merely how many albums can I sell? How many more world tours can I do in relation to Metallica? So of course he was unsuccessful. So despite all the money and the fans and the accolades, he still considered himself to be a failure. Now, you and I may look at Dave Mustaine's situation and laugh. Here's this guy with millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands of adoring fans, a career doing the things he loves best, and still he's getting all weepy-eyed that his rock star buddies from 20 years ago are way more famous than he is. This is the issue. If you want to change how you see your problems, you have to change what you value and how you measure failure and success. So the point is that if you create arbitrary metrics, if you create metrics of, I want to be a millionaire, or I want to be rich, or I want to be that, again, you're not going to be able to be truly happy because you're always going to be comparing yourself to the Joneses. And I think that's the lesson in this story. Because by every metric, Dave Mustaine was successful, apart from his own. Because his metric was, what's Metallica doing? So, oh man, this story is just nuts. So again, we're going to link it to another awesome rock story. So, as an example, let's look at another musician who got kicked out of another band. So, his story eerily echoes that of Dave Mustaine, but it happened 2 decades earlier. So, it was 1962. So, that is the year of the Cuban Missile Crisis. Shout out to GCSE history. And there was a buzz around an up-and-coming Liverpool group in England. This band had funny haircuts and an even funnier name. But their music was undeniably good, and the record industry was finally starting to take notice. And in 1962, after landing their first record contract, the other 3 members of this group quietly got together and asked their manager, Brian Epstein, to fire their drummer, Pete Best. Now, if you're a fan of this group, you already know who this person is. This band was the Beatles. So Imagine getting kicked out of the Beatles before the Beatles blew up. So, however, unlike Mustaine, Pete Best, who was the drummer and apparently was the best looking dude in the group, was not actually able to form another awesome band. He actually drank himself into depression and damn near suicide. Now, the man that Pete Best was replaced by was Ringo Starr. Now, Ringo Starr is that quirky dude who plays drums for the Beatles. So, yeah. But in an interview, Pete Best, who's the man who got kicked out of the Beatles, said, "I'm happier than I would have ever been with the Beatles." Best explained that the circumstances of him getting kicked out of the Beatles ultimately led him to meet his wife, and then his marriage led him to having children. His values had changed. He began to measure his life completely differently. Fame and glory would have been nice, sure, but he decided that what he already had was more important: a big and loving family, a stable marriage, and a simple life. He even still got to play drums, touring Europe and recording albums well into the 2000s. So what was really lost? Just a lot of attention and adulation, whereas what was gained was so much more to him. So these two cool stories are stories of knowing what you value in life. And again, the title of this book is The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Bleep. And he says at the beginning of the book is that what he wants you to do is to pick what to give a bleep about. So what Pete Best decided to give a bleep about was his family, to care about his marriage, to care about his children, where Dave Mustaine decided to compare his life to what Metallica did. So it wasn't about his family, it wasn't about his son if he has children. It was way more about, can I beat the next guy? Can I beat my competition? Which is admirable, and I like competition, but to the extent that it kind of determines your happiness is not a good look. So again, what are your metrics? What are your values? What are you caring about? And as my guy Mark Manson would say, what are you giving a bleep about? What are you caring about? So yeah, we move on to the next story. Well, not story, but the next lesson. So don't be over emotional. Emotions are part of the equation of our lives, but not the entire equation. Just because something feels good doesn't mean it is good. Just because something feels bad doesn't mean it is bad. So that's super easy to mix up in this day and age, especially with the age that I am at and the age that a lot of my listeners are at. You can cheat on your girlfriend, you might be like, oh man, this feels so good, and then after you're done, you're like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. But it's so easy to mix up what feels good, what feels bad, and understanding if it's just emotions or your gut. So, but then there are those people who over-identify with their emotions. So, everything is justified for no other reason than they felt it. Oh, I broke your windshield, but I was really mad. I couldn't help it. Or I dropped out of school and moved to Alaska just because it felt right. Decision making based on emotional intuition without the aid of reason to keep it in line pretty much always sucks. So that's not following your gut. That's just following emotion. And emotion's always going to be up and down. So yeah, that's not a good roller coaster to base your decisions on. Mark Manson reads, you know who bases their entire lives on their emotions? 3-year-old kids and dogs. You know what else 3-year-olds and dogs do? Shit on the carpet. So basically what he's saying is that being rational is better than blindly following your emotion. So you've got to strike the balance of following your gut and blindly following the next emotion that you feel, because inevitably you're going to feel low. So even if you're following your passion, and we have this epidemic of follow your passion, like just follow what comes to you, like it's going to be okay, follow your passion. Yes, follow your passion, yes. But blindly following your passion, blindly saying I'm going to be a racing car driver when you don't have a license is not bright, it's stupid. And even if you are doing what you love, if you're telling me that being the CEO of Apple, or being Anthony Joshua getting punched in the face every day, or being Kim Jong-un is always fun, you're crazy. There's going to be issues with no matter what you're doing. There's going to be adversity. If you retire at the age of 35 because your name is Mark Zuckerberg and Mark Zuckerberg says, I'm retiring, he's still going to have issues of laying on the beach, issues of boredom, issues of, I want to go back to Facebook, issues of, I want to create new apps, issues of, I miss the rush and hustle of invading people's privacy on the internet. The point is that there's always going to be issues no matter what you're doing. So again, you can't just follow emotion because emotion's always going to be a roller coaster ride. I think that's the message that he's pushing, and I love that message. So we move on to another awesome story, and one of my favorite stories in the book. And the title of this story that I put on my notes is so stupid, but yeah. Okay, so in 2008, the Taliban took control of the Swat Valley, a remote part of northern eastern Pakistan. So this is around when the credit crunch happened and the recession was kicking in. But Pakistan had their own problems. They quickly implemented their Muslim extremist agenda. So this is the Taliban doing what they do worse. No television, no film, no women outside the house without a male escort. Really? No girls attending school. I'd love to know what the Taliban's actual agenda is, because this just seems like misogynist tyranny. But whatever. Okay, Taliban, do you? By 2009, an 11-year-old Pakistani girl named, I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher your name, Malala Yousafzai. I butchered that. I should have gone on the internet and found out how to pronounce it. Malala Yousafzai. I'm going to just call her Malala because that's her first name. So, Malala had begun to speak out against the school ban. So, Malala's got some serious guts, because this is when the Taliban have taken control of your village and taken control of the area. She continued to attend her local school. She's a child, risking both her and her father's lives. Her father must have been like, bro, chill out. I don't know, I'm sure her father supported her. She also attended conferences in nearby cities. She wrote online, how dare the Taliban take away my right for education. Okay, when I read that, I thought to myself, wow, I really take education for granted, because this girl is risking her life for education when there's me taking it for granted. So yeah, humility right there. In 2012, oh my god. So she was 14 at the age of in 2012. She was at the age of 14 in 2012, which means in 2009, when she first started campaigning, she was 11 years old. 11 years old, an 11-year-old Pakistani girl. I said that at the beginning. What? Wow, what an inspiration. So this is where the story gets dark. In 2012, at the age of 14, she was shot in the face as she rode the bus home from school one day. A masked Taliban soldier armed with a rifle boarded the bus and asked, "Who is Malala? Tell me or I will shoot everyone here." Malala identified herself, an amazing choice in and of itself, which is just incredible. And the man shot her in the head in front of all the other passengers. Malala went into a coma and almost died. The Taliban stated publicly that if she somehow survived the attempt, they would kill both her and her father. Today, Malala is still alive in 2018, Taliban. And what makes it funnier is that I searched Malala, and it doesn't even look like she got shot in the head. She's still beautiful. So, in your face, Taliban, she still looks good. And she got shot in the face. So, yeah, they must have shot her in the back of the face. In the back of the head. Because she has no damages on her face at all. I'm searching again just to be 100% sure. Because of what I saw. Yeah, if you just type in Malala, she's the first person that turns up. But she had absolutely, positively no damage to her face. Yeah, exactly. I'm looking again. She had no damage to her face. Yeah, Malala's 21 years old. So, of course, she's born. Oh my gosh. Malala was born in the same year that I was born. Malala was born in July 12th, 1997. I was born October 23rd, 1997. Oh my God, what am I doing with my life? She's a Nobel Peace Prize winner. Oh my God. I need to up my game. We are the same age. I'm going to be 21 in literally a month. Wow, Malala, you are incredible and you're an inspiration. And the Taliban, you messed up because You created someone that is that is touring the world, speaking against you guys, and she's 21 years. Oh my God! Don't even get me started on this woman. So she still speaks out against violence and oppression toward women in Muslim countries. And she's now a best-selling author. In Your Face, Taliban. In 2014, she received the Nobel Peace Prize. So she received the Nobel Peace Prize as a teenager for her efforts. It would seem that being shot in the face only gave her a larger audience and more courage than before. In Your Face, Taliban, it would have been easy for her to lie down and say, I can't do anything, or I have no choice, which is what 99.9% of the world would have done, and probably what I would have done, to be honest with you. She's got some guts. Ironically, that would have been, still would have been her choice, but she chose the opposite. This is just madness. So, oh my gosh. So she must have got shot in the back of the head, and that would have given her enough reason to say, I'm done here. So let's put this into perspective. The Taliban have publicly said, we're gonna kill you if you don't stop. You don't stop. They shoot you in the head. Then they say again, if you continue to do what you're doing, we're gonna kill you again. She says whatever, continues to campaign, wins a Nobel Peace Prize. She's incredible. And one of my favorite movies is Kill Bill, and if you haven't watched Kill Bill, I highly recommend you watching it. It's Volume 1, Volume 2. It's an awesome movie. But in Kill Bill, they shoot what's her name? Who plays Kill Bill? What's her name? Uma Thurman. So Uma Thurman plays the main character in Kill Bill. What's her name again? What's her character name? It even says character name. The Bride. So she's called The Bride. I can't remember her name. Oh, so annoying. But yeah, so she's called The Bride. Uma Thurman plays the bride in Volume 1. And Uma Thurman, this is not ruining anything if you haven't watched Kill Bill. It's literally in the first 2 minutes of the movie. She gets shot in the head. But the catch is that she shoots her in the head, but her brain doesn't get affected at all. She gets in a coma for 3 years, but she wakes up. So, in a funky kind of way, that must have been what happened to Malala, because Malala survived. You know, Malala was fine. She was in a coma, but she ended up living. So, again, that's an inspiration for your goals, your goals, you know. Chase the right goal. The difference between Hiro Onoda and Malala is that Malala was blindly following a cause that she knew that she knew had, what's the word? She was blindly following a cause that she knew was the right thing to do. Well, I think where Onoda thought it was the right thing to do, but it was at the expense of others in terms of killing people, in terms of doing horrible things to people. So I think Malala is awesome. I think she was chasing a goal in the right way. And even though it was dangerous and even though it was scary, super scary, she still said to herself, nah, this is something I firmly believe in. So yeah, shout out to Malala. You're awesome. Okay, we move on. This chapter, or this lesson I've called is going to take a lot of failure. So, another story, because you know I love stories. So, when Pablo Picasso was an old man, he was sitting in a cafe in Spain. I didn't know Pablo Picasso was from Spain. Is Pablo Picasso from Spain? I mean, if you like art right now, you're like, of course he's from Spain, bro. I thought he was from Italy. Jesus Christ. Yeah, Pablo Picasso's from Spain. I legit thought he was Italian. That's kind of bad. Oh well, that's why I'm doing a lot of reading. That's why I'm doing this podcast. He was nonchalant about the whole thing, drawing whatever amused him in that moment. So Picasso was doodling on a napkin in Spain. So kind of the same way that a teenage boy draws what he draws on a bathroom stool. I changed what the author said. I'm sure you can guess what he said. So except this was Picasso. So his bathroom stool drawings were more like impressionist, awesome impressionist drawings laced on coffee stains. So anyways, some woman sitting near him saw it was Picasso and was looking in awe. After a few moments, Picasso finished his coffee and crumpled up the napkin to throw away as he left. The woman stopped him. Wait, she said. Can I have that napkin you were drawing on? I'll pay you for it. Sure, Picasso replied. $20,000. What a dick. What? It took you literally 2 minutes, the woman said. No, man, Picasso said. It took me over 60 years to draw this. He stuffed the napkin in his pocket and walked out of the cafe. So she should have definitely let him throw it in the bin and then gone in the bin like a real scavenger, but whatever. Moral of the story. Improvement at anything is based on thousands of tiny failures. And the magnitude of your success is based on how many times you failed at something. If someone is better than you at something, then it's likely because she has failed at it more times than you have. If someone is worse than you, it's likely because he hasn't been through all of the painful learning experiences you have. Talk about jiu-jitsu. I heavily relate to this in martial arts because getting choked out or smashed is part of martial arts, and or even losing weight. Losing weight, you're gonna have lots of failures. You're gonna have those days where you want to eat a donut, but you don't eat a donut. You decide to go for a run, or even speaking to the opposite sex. Speaking to the opposite sex is pretty daunting at first, and it takes a lot of practice, a lot of failure, and a lot of rejection. A lot of going up to girls, a lot of going up to your dream guy and just getting mugged. Just having your dreams crushed. And I think that until you go out and you put yourself out there, you're never going to be in a position to have what you want. And I remember, again, I didn't write this in my notes, but Mark Manson said everybody wants that dream body, but isn't willing to put in the hours in the gym. Or everybody wants an amazing sex life and an amazing partner, but isn't willing to go and to put themselves out there for rejection and staring at their phone when nobody's going to text and sending that Snapchat and not getting a reply, or WhatsApping someone and not getting that reply and having that heartache. If you're not willing to do that, then you shouldn't expect the reward. That's I think what the whole point of this is. Pablo Picasso had been through so many failures of drawing and rejection, and I'm sure he had lots of struggles. So again, the whole point is that no pain, no gain. I think that's the whole point of this lesson. Speaking of pain and gain, that movie with Mark Wahlberg and The Rock is so awful. Oh my god, don't watch it. Okay, we are on to the last chapter, boys and girls. This well, not the last chapter, but the last section that I pulled from the book. I mean, the book has loads of lessons, but I just wanted to pick the ones that I enjoyed the most. And this is one that I wanted to share lastly. So this is what I've called pain is part of the process. So we're moving forward from failure. So in the 1950s, a Polish psychologist named Kazimierz Dabrowski, sorry Polish people, butchered that, studied World War II survivors and how they coped with traumatic experiences in the war. This was Poland, so things have been pretty gruesome. These people had experienced or witnessed mass starvation, bombings that turned cities to rubble, the Holocaust, the torture of prisoners of war, and the rape and or murder of family members. Jeez. If not by the Nazis, then a few later by the Soviets. We forget the Soviets just raped and pillaged and did what they want. Jeez. As Dabrowski studied the survivors, he noticed something both surprising and amazing. A sizable percentage of them believed that the wartime experiences they suffered, although painful and indeed traumatic, had actually caused them to become better, more responsible, and yes, even happier people. So, and no, I think the whole point of this story is that it's all about mentality. So although they went through some of the most difficult stuff that a human being can go through, the Polish went through the ringer, but they came out on the other side with a positive outlook because they thought to themselves, this is not going to break us. This is just another obstacle in the road. And I think it kind of alludes to Anne Frank, and Anne Frank writing in her diary, although she was going through the most difficult time ever. So she was a German. So yeah, she was a German-born writer, but they were Jewish, if I remember correctly. So yeah, they were Jewish, and of course, Hitler created all these laws, laws against the Jews in 1939. I remember vaguely from GCSE and A-level, it got so harsh, especially when he took full control in 1939. After like the Reichstag fire. So basically it became so difficult for Jews and Polish people. But regardless of all the pain they went through, they said to themselves, nah, this is not going to break us. This is only going to make us stronger. So I think that's an extremely cool study from Dabrowski. And it showed what the Polish people were made of. So yeah, shout out to the Polish people. You guys are made of steel. You're built from steel. So yeah, that concludes The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Bleep. Now, that book is awesome, and I'm so happy I read it, because doing this podcast I found so fun. I'm sure, because I'm laughing at every story I'm doing. I really enjoyed doing this podcast. I thought the stories that Mark Manson shared with us were hilarious. And doing commentary on this book, analysing this book was awesome, and I love it. I highly recommend that you read it. It's only 144 pages. And you can get it off the internet. You can buy it. I got it for free because I have this cool website. But yeah, I loved this book. And it was awesome to look at self-esteem and confidence. And there's lots of other lessons that I haven't shared because I just picked my favorite. But there's some great lessons about building trust, and some other lessons about boundaries and the importance of rejection, which I kind of went over, and being careful what you believe. So again, the book is awesome. And if you want to improve your mindset, or just enjoy, have a good book to enjoy, which isn't going to preach to you but will level with you, this book is perfect. So yeah, thank you so much for listening. As Mita, thank you so much for listening, because I know you have a billion and one things to do, but again, you gave me your time. So yeah, if you enjoyed this podcast, please leave me some feedback. Please send it to a friend. I really appreciate it. Get in touch with me, please. I've just created a new Instagram. It is at DanJamesHH. DanJamesHH if you want to follow me. So yeah, if you want to say hello or leave me some feedback or let me know what you didn't like, what you did like, please message me. I will respond 100%, because I don't get much messages about the podcast. So I would love to I'd love to hear some feedback. Please send it to a friend if you enjoyed it, because again, I love doing these podcasts and I put a lot of work into them. So if you think a friend will gain some insight or learn something new, or even enjoy the stories of Hiro Onoda, please share it to them, because doing these podcasts are awesome. So yeah, God bless you. God bless your family. Don't be like Onoda, because Onoda's crazy. Have a great week. I will see you guys soon. More great book analysis and guests coming on soon. So enjoy your week. That voice break. Enjoy your week. God bless you. I'll see you soon. DJ's take number 13. In a bit, y'all.